And it's lights out. Welcome to the Pitwall Podcast, Brazil Grand Prix and Sprint Race Reaction Edition. Joining me this evening is my bro Dominick, my father Dr. David Kessler, our great friend Paola, and me, your host Jeanmark. Let's go. Amazing news for the second week in a row. The Pitwall season-long league with 278 teams placed second here at the Brazilian Grand Prix.
Second place, baby!
Woot woot! So keep on doing it. We're having a good job. Now, as we look at our team standings, Mercedes, which was ahead of Red Bull by 1 point, has now extended that lead to 11. Ferrari, which was just a few points ahead of McLaren, is now 31 points ahead, and then Alpine and AlphaTauri, funny enough, were tied at 106 apiece, and now they're tied again at 112 apiece. Last week we asked who we thought was going to pull out the season. We had Dominick thinking Alpine with Alonso and Ocon being able to outperform Gasly and Tsunoda, but Dad thought the other team would be able to pull it out. Do you guys still stand by your decisions, Dad, for AlphaTauri?
I sure do. I like how Gasly's doing it, and I'm hoping that Tsunoda can stay on the track without running into people or having people run into them. So I still like their chances.
Okay, so you're thinking that one driver will be able to outscore or at least keep pace with the two Alpines. And bro, you think that Alonso and Ocon will eventually take it over?
There's a few races left, and I still want to believe that at any point, at least Alonso for sure will just have a exemplary race.
I think the issue here is Tsunoda just doesn't score points. He doesn't seem to be able to get in the top 10, whereas Alonso and Ocon more consistently get up there, even if it's in that 9th or 10th spot.
Which is a good perspective. We've always wondered why Red Bull was considering Toro Rosso as the B team, and then it got rebranded AlphaTauri, and then like, hey, we're now the sister team, and we're like, change your name doesn't make a difference. But now we see that when you have a driver like Gasly, that does make a difference. But in the past, you would have rookies, young guys that are trying to prove themselves. We shouldn't be surprised why they weren't able to get that many points. But imagine if you had next year, for example, if Tsunoda is able to be performing like Gasly, you could easily be like doubling your points based off of two drivers consistently getting in the top 10. And so if AlphaTauri wants to be the sister team rather than the B team, Tsunoda is going to have to start pulling his weight, like you're saying, Paola. But this now segues to our driver standings. Alonso with his performance is still at the 10th spot. Gasly 30 points ahead. Ricciardo with his 105, almost 50 points behind Norris. But if I get the right feeling from you guys, Norris, ever since his almost win at Russia, hasn't been able to do as well as we think. But fantasy points wise, he has been starting to feel like he's not as a good of a pick as the Ferraris. And do you guys think that's purely down to the Ferrari engine, or is Sainz and Leclerc just driving better than Norris?
I think right now they're driving better. I think the engine upgrade gave them more confidence. Norris did a risky move this last time trying to get around, and they got his punctured tire. I'm glad I took him off my team, Leclerc, and he helped me get on the podium doing that switch over.
I took Norris off my team a couple of races ago as well, and I honestly think that engine is making a huge difference. You just don't see Norris or Ricciardo pulling the same amount of speed during quali. But I also don't know if that's something Norris can't necessarily work around.
What's your prediction? Is your prediction Norris will be overtaken, or do you think Norris is going to defend himself against Leclerc?
I think that Norris, if he can qualify well, he is good at defending, and we've seen him do that in the past. I think it's like a 50-50. I think right now Ferrari has the upper hand, but not by much.
Agreed. Hamilton had such great straight line speed, and Norris was going even faster than Hamilton was on the straights during the onboards. So if Norris had gotten past the Ferraris at the beginning of the race, he would have been able to keep his position for sure. And then if he hadn't punctured his tire, he probably could have at least passed one of the Ferraris. And so I think that these next three races that are going to favor the long straights, which McLaren is by far better than the Mercedes at the long straights because of the aerodynamics, he should be able to overcome some of that engine deficit, which, you know, it sounds funny to say the Ferrari engine is better than the Mercedes engine because the Mercedes engine was blowing people's doors off, and we're about to get to that. But as we close this section up, Dad, you're thinking that Leclerc, who's just a few points behind Norris, is going to overtake him?
Yes, I do. So Leclerc has shown me that he's not taking as much risk as he did earlier in the year. He's not making the same mistakes as he did in the year. And even though he doesn't qualify as well as Sainz, he seems to somehow pass Sainz during the race. He did that the last two races, which helped my DRD league. Unfortunately for Dominick, Leclerc pulled it out because he beat Sainz.
Yep, by 1 point, and that's a foreshadowing. And it's crazy to me that Sainz did so well during qualifying, out-qualified Leclerc, did so well during the sprint race. He finished third, but because he got passed during the race, Leclerc ended up scoring more points than him. Back to McLaren. Reported on Twitter, the Volkswagen Group has been in discussions with the Formula One group for quite a while about how they can get into Formula One. One of the ideas was to be able to build engines starting when the new regs come in 2026. It is currently rumored that Audi has bought the McLaren Group, which means that moving forward, Audi might start being able to supply engines to McLaren. And if that's the case, then McLaren could potentially be able to compete against Mercedes, because there's no way that you as a customer team can beat the manufacturer team. But if McLaren is able to get a different engine manufacturer, then that's where they could start being competitive. That won't be immediate, but that's something down the road that we could see McLaren being able to have that advantage. The Volkswagen Group also would plan to have Porsche come in and partner with Red Bull for their powertrain. Currently, Red Bull has the Honda engine, which will get rebranded for the next 3 seasons, and the idea is that Porsche would be the one who would come in and take that. And who knows, maybe when they do the new engines for 2026, Porsche would continue on with Red Bull. So then you would have Volkswagen Group providing 2 separate teams, 2 separate outfits with 2 separate engines. I'd like to share with you a special tab that I made in our Google spreadsheet. Link will be in the description below. I also include this in preparation for the sprint race qualifying preview video that dropped last Friday between Free Practice 1 and Quali. I tracked the position of every driver in every session for every sprint race qualifying weekend. Here on the bottom of this chart, you see the averages. So the average position for each driver, I take that as a grain of salt. So you can compare to see if their free practice session was on average better than the overall position. Was their quality position better or worse? Was their sprint race better or worse in their race? People that was able to get consistent, like for example, we have Sainz. He was better than his average in all 3. Russell was better than his average in all 3. Ricardo was better, even though he had a DNF this last week, which is surprising to me, probably because he won in Monza. Norris and Bottas. And then if you scroll down, you will see here are the points scored in fantasy. And so our highest scorer over 3 sprint race qualifying weekends was Bottas with 46, followed with Hamilton with 39, then Leclerc with 37, then Norris with 36, then Verstappen with 31. Of course, Verstappen DNF'd 2 out of the 3 weekends and still averaged 31 points, which is better than everyone else, like Perez with 29, Ricardo with 25, Sainz with 24, Alonso with 23. Then, if we look at these charts on the right, sprint race points total and average. Bottas average of 46 points, but the most points over the 3 sprint qualifying race weekends of 138, followed by Hamilton with 117, Leclerc 110, Norris 107, Verstappen 93, and then working your way down. Gasly, going into this race weekend, had scored -1 points total. And then because of a good race result this time, he was able to bring that up to 23. Anything that stands out to you guys looking over the stats of the sprint race qualifying weekends in fantasy?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how Verstappen still was like the 5th highest points despite DNFing, and that's amazing to me.
It's nice to see Leclerc up in 3rd, because combined with how good the new Ferrari engine is looking, they keep this format. I really think he'll shine on sprint weeks. He seems to be able to stay really composed while being aggressive in these short 20-30 lap sprints. So I'm excited to see how he'll perform next year.
Especially because next season, they're claiming that there will be 7. So we're going to be more than doubling this year there was 3. Next year there will be 7. Now let's get your guys' post-mortem. How did you rate the sprint qualifying format for this season?
I have a question for you before that. How many people think that Bottas is going to be first next year?
In an Alfa Romeo? Not a chance.
I'm feeling Bottas. Bottas is going to show us all what he can do when he's the first driver.
Gonna have to get adjusted to a new car just like everyone else who's switching teams, on top of just downgrading massively.
If the Ferrari engine is that powerful, and to put in perspective, so you guys know, Ferrari's the only one running the new Ferrari engine. They didn't give it to Alfa Romeo or Haas, because Haas and Alfa Romeo haven't been doing any upgrades this season. Imagine that powerful Ferrari engine. Now Bottas is able to use it. And if Alfa Romeo has a good aero package, boom, now he's going to be right up there. I still don't think it'll happen, but he could have the tools at his disposal to be surprising us. Especially like you guys said, there is a completely different mentality if you are a number 1 driver. His teammate is going to be Guan Yu Zhou. He is going to be the first Chinese driver that'll be in Formula 1. As a rookie, he'll be bringing in $25 million for the Alfa Romeo team. So not only does Bottas have the advantage of being the number 1 driver, his teammate's a rookie, which means that he's going to get all the preferential treatment because he has all the experience.
Okay, I was joking, obviously, what I said earlier. I'm going to be excited to see just how Bottas is able to do with a change in scenery. He's proven that he can drive very well in the Mercedes car, even as the second driver. So it'll be interesting to see what it'll look like when he finally gets a vehicle that's built around him.
Setup is solid. We'll talk about him as much as we talk about Russell like this season. Whenever there's a good sprint race or some good collisions, like right off the start, and the midfield and the ones at the back can really race and gain some spots, I think we'll see Bottas really shine. Otherwise, I think we'll miss talking about him.
I think he's going to be like how we talk about Vettel this season. Changes the team, Vettel can shine, but his car isn't good enough to be a constant reminder. And I think that's what we're going to see with Bottas. If the Alfa Romeo has a good weekend, nice. But most of the time, you're going to be talking about the Mercedes, the Red Bull, the Ferrari, the McLaren. What a race. Or as Dominick would probably say, what a blitz. Okay, let's talk about the black elephant in the room. There was a car, a black Mercedes, that was just destroying, eating cars for breakfast, eating them for lunch, eating them for supper. No matter what session it was, it didn't matter what race, sprint race, or qualifying, Hamilton was just beyond everybody by half a second or greater. I know a lot of people are saying it's one of the greatest drives ever. We have to say one of the reasons why it was so powerful is because of that brand new engine. We have to say qualifying was so powerful because of the illegal wing, but he still stormed through the pack over the course of the sprint race qualifying, gaining 15 positions. He takes a 5-position penalty, and then from 10th on the grid goes and storms the field, and then ends up beating Verstappen by nearly 8 seconds. How do you guys feel? Was it really Hamilton, or was it just an OP car? We'll start off with you, bro.
At no point ever will I say that it was not Hamilton, because obviously you still have to drive the car. When I saw him pass Verstappen and then just take off, that engine definitely played a large part, I feel, in his results. And the Mercedes car is already better than most of the field, so now we have pretty much the best car on the field coupled with a new engine. Of course, I was expecting that to happen.
Hamilton, I think, only respects Verstappen's skills on the thing. I think he would blitz by anyone else. Even with Verstappen's skills, even swerving a little too much, Hamilton went by him. I think it was a combination of probably the best car on the grid with the best 1 or 2 drivers, but the one with the most experience. Hamilton did a great job. I won't take anything away from him. And we'll just see whether or not his car, now that he used a new engine and pushed that new engine so fast, whether or not it'll keep that speed or whether or not it'll slow back down.
True. And this is why I'm glad that F1 made the rule. It used to be that you could change your engine power throughout the race, throughout the weekend. And they're like, no, we're going to change that rule. You need to put your engine under parc fermé, which means whatever engine level you start the race weekend with on your engine is what you have to use for the whole race. Because what Mercedes would do is they would power up their engine, overtake you, then lower it for Hamilton to cruise and manage his tires, and then they could make their engines last forever. Here, like you're saying, because they knew he had to make a lot of passes, they had to do a higher engine. But then that meant that the engine was that high the whole time, which means, like Verstappen was saying, saying after the first initial weekend, when it gets broken in, then that engine level, they can't put it that high again because it's going to be overtaxing it or it starts to degrade. And so I'm glad the F1 did that rule because I cannot put up with 3 more races if he has that same OP performance. Why have a season go this long and then suddenly Mercedes is winning by 30 seconds? Like if Hamilton didn't have to take the engine penalty, he would have been 30, 40 seconds ahead of the second place. That's just how OP that car was this weekend. And so I'm hoping, really hoping, we're going to have a neck and neck battle again next race. Paola, your thoughts? You have some tender feelings towards Hamilton?
Yeah, I want to give him maybe a little bit more credit that he's being given overall, just because there was that almost contact moment midway, like lap 48. That could have easily been contact and Lewis spins out, and he didn't. He did what he had to do to avoid that contact. I think that coupled with like a really good team strategy was really what helped, especially like in the sprint with the undercut. So I think it's a combination. The car is showing speeds that we're not seeing from Red Bull, but I just want to give Hamilton some solid credit from just being so consistent and avoiding like what could have been a disastrous end for him.
I thought it was kind of sad though for you, Paula. You know, you had him on your team and he talked a little discouraging, and so you swapped him out, and then he had such a big performance after he discouraged you.
I know I sound like such a flip-flopper. I don't like the way that Lewis talks about himself. Like, I wish that he would stay confident regardless of the situation, because he obviously is, in my opinion, the best driver out of the 20 that are on there. I don't like it, and I've said this before, when he starts going in like the woe is me sort of mentality. After the race, he talked about how he's really adopted the you never give up, and that's what he's going to go with for the rest of the season, come what may. So it's just nice to see him back. Whatever he did in the last couple weeks with his trainer, I know I've been seeing on his Instagram, he's been training a lot, meditating, all the mental health. Maybe that's what he needed.
How did you guys feel then about Verstappen defending? I know he got the black and white flag for swerving, and that was very clear he was swerving. But do you think that Verstappen was purposely trying to run Hamilton off the road? I know the steward said it's noted, no investigation, but a lot of people are saying it's kind of odd that the onboard camera, if you look at F1 TV, you can watch their onboard, but at the moment where they were fighting, the onboard switched to look behind to see where Hamilton was. But that was the moment where you needed to see Verstappen's wheel to see if he was going to the right to try to force him off the road. So everyone's like, oh, we don't know the TV direction. And do you think Verstappen was looking for contact, or was it just because of the way that Hamilton was attacking him that he got put in a position that forced them both off the road?
I think they're both great drivers, and they both thought they could outbrake the other one. They both thought if they waited just long enough, the other one would break first. And neither of them, they both broke at the last minute, and so they both went off the track.
So you thought it was like a racing incident?
I thought too, just how far out Verstappen went. I don't know that he would have done that on purpose. And I also think from Hamilton's perspective, it, again, avoiding that contact at all costs, and, went out maybe a little bit further than he should have. But they both did. And I think if we would have seen Verstappen like really go far out, but then, somehow manage to come back in and stay in like at the last minute, then I would have been more inclined to think that he was like kind of purposefully pushing as much as he could. But we didn't see that. Like, they both went off and they both maintained like side by side.
You also had this during the sprint. Guys were just getting pushed wide because so many people were trying, like Dad said, outbreak each other. And so that's probably what we were seeing there as well. It's now time for Heroes and Zeros. Bro, who was your hero?
I'm going to have to go with Bottas this week. He finished first place in the sprint qualifier, which gave Mercedes 3 points. And he didn't win the race, but still did very well. I kind of expected that he wasn't going to win. With Hamilton blazing around, they would have had him give it up to Hamilton if that's what had ended up happening. Was able to get third place. Real excited about that.
Which brings us to Dad's hero.
Perez, my hero. I have mixed feelings about it. He's my hero because when they couldn't get him up into third place, they went ahead and got the fastest lap away from Hamilton, which was good for the Red Bull team. He was a little frustrated that he couldn't match the pace of Bottas. And my mixed feelings is the fact that he was on my DRD league and he lost to Bottas. But he's still my hero.
Well, that came down to the virtual safety car. If Bottas had done what normally would have happened, Perez had done the undercut. But because of the virtual safety car, he was able to get 11 seconds shaved off of his pit stop time. And that was really powerful for Bottas. Speaking of the performance of teams and tires, on to Paola's hero.
My hero this week, happy to say that it's Ferrari. Both drivers had a really good race. Sainz obviously struggled and going back down to P7 after he collided a bit with Norris, but he really pulled himself together on race day. So kudos to him. And obviously Leclerc was super impressive, 5th on race day. So overall, I think Ferrari should be really happy. And I saw the stat that this is their 4th consecutive race. Both drivers are in the top 8. I think we're really seeing the engine do a lot of work, and both drivers seem to be really focused and working as a team. Yay!
Woohoo! My hero is Ocon. Didn't hear a lot about him over the course of the race weekend. He was able to beat his teammate, and Ocon just put in a solid drive. I've been running Russell and Mick Schumacher the entire season as my 5th driver. And this one, I gave it a go and put on Ocon, and he did not disappoint. So congrats, Ocon, to be my hero. Now to our zeros. I'm going to have to start off because while on the one hand, I was glad to have Ocon, I almost got away with having Norris. I got changed out last second talking to the community, and I was like, maybe Norris. And if he had made that pass stick on the start of the race and didn't get his tire punctured, I think it would have paid off. But I'm sorry that Norris had such a miserable race. And oof, he's my zero. What about you, Paola? Who's your zero?
My zero this week is Tsunoda. Tsunoda was really disappointing. I mean, he went into that corner where he collided with Stroll just a few laps in. To do that just so early in the race, I felt like was such a huge mistake. He had the soft tires on, so I felt like he could have ridden those out a little bit longer before doing that kind of move. And obviously it cost him so many places and ended up in 15th, where he could have been up there with Gasly, in my opinion. It's just really unfortunate. I just want to see him do better.
Dad, your zero.
It's Ricciardo. Gave so many glimpses over the last few races of doing well and getting up there with the Ferraris. I was disappointed that he DNF'd. However, just like Perez disappointed me on the DRD, but because Ricciardo DNF, I won my match in the DRD. So I have mixed feelings about Ricciardo actual finish.
Dominick, who's your zero?
I also have to go with Tsunoda. I feel like we've pretty much covered what was said, but I just watched the race and the crash and everything. So yeah, just Tsunoda.
So you and Paola both picked the same zero.
Yep.
Tsunoda, 000.
And now it's time for It's in the Numbers. Last week, we had the numbers 8, 3, 4, and 0. And the answer was the amount of places drivers lost based on penalties. So the answers then was Tsunoda, Norris, Russell, Ocon, Stroll. Kesko, with a little bit of extra hints, got it as usual. And after such exemplary answers over the last couple of weeks, I decided it is time to give him his own award. And so Kesko will be receiving the first Kesko Award. So congratulations, Kesko.
And this week should be pretty challenging because Dominick came up with it. It's 19:15 and 14:00. The hint is Brazil Grand Prix weekend, and it's name the events. If you can name the events and give us an explanation, we'll be happy to give you a shout out. You can get the Kesko Award.
Now we're going to look at our lineups preparing for the Qatar Grand Prix. Recognize there's only 1 week, so we're going to have a mixture of discussion. The first is our day trading. That's when we talk about our value picks, who we want to have so that we're able to increase the value of the team. Then the second usually revolves around points pick. We'll start off with you, bro. Your lineup. Anybody you thinking about trading or changing out?
My team is exactly the same as last week right now anyway, because they're all trending upwards in sentiment. I don't really have a whole lot of options if I'm trying to keep my core cast. Probably the biggest difference would be between Raikkonen and Ocon. I'll figure out which of those two I prefer once I have more
free
information.
practice session 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah.
Paola's lineup.
As of right now, my lineup is the same as it was this past week. I'm thinking about taking out Giovinazzi and putting in Tsunoda, depending how they do in practice. I think I'm going to keep this lineup and keep my faith in Leclerc, even though the sentiment is going down.
Yeah, that's a big thing we have to discuss is going in the next race, Leclerc is eligible for a power streak. That is 15 bonus points, 5 for his race streak, 10 for his quali streak. And while his sentiment is hovering around negative 76%, is it going to be enough of a sway to get people off of Sainz or to just keep Sainz and then switch off someone else and pick up Leclerc? And I believe that the negative sentiment we're seeing towards Leclerc, because it's been over 2 weeks long, over 2 race periods, he is probably not going to drop in sentiment, especially because he's got that power streak looming. People are going to want him. So if you can have him on your team, you'll get that sentiment value increase. And then moving on to Dad's lineup.
So I like my lineup, just like you mentioned about Leclerc. I'm thinking about bringing in Sainz for Leclerc and switching him out before quali, just so I don't have that potential if he does bottom out. The problem is I don't want to do what Dominick did and switch him out and then Friday forget to put him back in. So I have to decide what to do with that. I think with his streak, if I switched him out for Sainz, I don't think I could get a team of other drivers that would make up for that streak. So I think I need to keep him in, even though he costs more than Sainz.
This now brings me to my team. Team 1 is where I do my minimal trading, trying to do the hard numbers. I had Sainz on both teams. They were going to look identical. And then everybody in the comments was saying, but the McLarens weren't using softs during free practice session 1. I was like, what? He was that fast? Norris was that fast on mediums? I'll give him a chance. And if he hadn't had that tire puncture, I think it would have paid off because Ocon did outscore Russell. But on team 1, switching from Sainz to Leclerc, because I had that conversation with Dad, I was on the fence. It was a 1-point difference. Over the course of a whole season, that's not a big issue because that's what team 1 is. But for team 2, that could have made the world of a difference. And in your case, Dad, you got on the podium because of it. Now, my team 1 hasn't been as high in the league leaderboard because I had Mega Drive Verstappen at an earlier date because I did not want to run what I did earlier where both teams had Mega Drive at Silverstone, both teams got burnt. But then as you can see, there's normally a 200-point difference between team 1 and team 2, but because of the Mega Driver, now team 1 has caught up and is within 100 points. So that is the difference it makes by having the right time for your Mega Driver. Of course, for Team 2, I'm going to get off that Norris bandwagon. It is so sad that Norris was such a consistent, and in the last part of the season, you just have to go Ferrari. Just got to go Ferrari. It's now time for the One Race Challenge, or ORC. We'll begin with our ORC Elite. Being able to have a team with $100 million value or less, what is the maximum points that you could have scored? And the calculations were that Verstappen, Turboing Perez, Gasly, Ocon, Russell, and Red Bull would have given you 261 points. But bro, with your team, you almost beat the ORC Elite. Tell us about that.
Ocon for Raikkonen because of sentiment reasons, and I was planning on switching him back, and I actually forgot, and there would have been a 2-point difference. So I ended up with a score of 160. So if I had made that change, I'd have gotten 162. And so I'm a little bummed out about that. The point is, if I was this close to beating the ORC Elite, it was probably a week.
It's now time for our ORC leaderboard. Link is in the description below for the spreadsheet under the tab ORC. You'll notice a trend here. If you see it green with white, that means they've beaten the ORC Elite. So the first time that ever happened this season was in round 7. Pretty much everybody beat the ORC Elite. Why is there no people tied for second place? Well, everyone, this is a relic of the past. At the beginning of the season, we made this decision that there was a slight difference between being on the podium and being first, second, third. And I think how we did it is if you had 2 first place, then you would skip second place and you go down to third. But as you can see, since then, we've actually made that different because I made this ORC leaderboard and I just say first, second, third, we'll just write you all down here. And then the top 3 get on the podium.
How hard would it be to fix that?
How do you go back to a previous week and find who would have been in third? You know what I mean?
Does the Fantasy Formula 1 site not keep track of that?
People leave, people join new teams.
I see.
Starting next year from race 1, it'll be very consistent.
We could just assume I won every single race.
Anyway, so here's the pattern. You'll notice that with the exception of race 7, you have maybe once in a while you'll get someone who beats the ORC Elite, and it's usually the person who gets gold. But starting in round 17, we've had 3 races in a row where somebody on the podium is beating the ORC Elite. The last 2 races, everybody who got first, second, or third beat the ORC Elite. So congratulations to you guys in the community. This is going to show that not only are we getting the team value that's high enough to get better drivers, but you guys are picking great drivers to be able to have that outstanding performance. Here on the far right, we see the average points and value. So the average value to get on the podium with a bronze is 104.3, 106 for silver, and surprisingly, it's less value to get a gold with a 105.7. Just because you have a higher value does not mean that your drivers are going to keep from crashing or having a bad weekend. But you can see that the average score you get to get on bronze is 207. Add 6 more points to get a silver, 224 points in order to get a gold. And if you wanted to average the ORC Elite, that'd be 246 points. Scrolling all the way over to the left, we now have a new number 1 on our ORC leaderboard. Yuso has finally cracked the 100-point barrier. Let's give him a round of applause.
Yeah! Woo-hoo.
Way to go.
Dad, congratulations. You've gotten on the podium once again with a bronze performance, and we calculated you needed 2 separate medals in order to break 100. So you think over the next 3 races you'll be able to get 1 more podium appearance?
I stay optimistic. I think so.
Okie dokie. Well, you're tied for 4th. Congratulations to DMG, who also is right there because of this last weekend with an 88. Matthew C, also, you're hanging in there. Just 1 podium can be the difference between where you rank going into these last 3 races.
I think it'd be cool if the top 5 out of the league were all above 100 by the end of the year. I think that'd be cool.
Well, you guys have the opportunity. Now for our ORC podium. We want to give a shout out to Fabiano. He had the highest score the whole week. He made a drive for Verstappen, and his team value was 111.1. He was so close to getting the top step of the podium, but Yuso, having a team value of 110.8 million, is going to have the top step, which means we'll hear the Finnish national anthem. We were so close to hearing the Brazilian national anthem at his home race. So good on you, Fabiano. You did a great job. This is where I do want to promo some things to everyone. Keep in mind that we calculate teams after they lock. There's no problem about you submitting teams or changing them after the fact, but they won't be included in our podium adjustments. But here are the people we also want to recognize. Our second place positions, Prachi, doing pretty good. 1 point difference between being a gold or being a bronze. Cesare, maybe it's Cesar. Tell me in the comments, how did I pronounce it? Like 1 or 2? I see that you are from Italy, so you can tell me the Italian pronunciation. Kyle as well. And then we go down to what appears to be our lone 3rd place. Ryu from Mexico. Congratulations. But because I use Mega Driver, you have to recognize that we take the base score. And so we have some more people that get added to our podium. Time for 1st place, DMG. Congratulations. He was able to fit Verstappen, Bottas, and Perez on his team. What an absolute mad lad. Congratulations. Duke was able to get a silver on the podium, a very similar strategy to most other people. He didn't Mega Drive Verstappen. And then Dad, you were able to get a bronze with the same lineup that I had for Team 1. So congratulations to everyone who got on the podium like we showed on the leaderboard. But remember, the top 3, which in these cases are all golds, are going to be on there. And then the one with the lowest team value gets to hear their national anthem. But because people have their values, we look at a total and say who had the highest value, or the Fat Stacks Award. And that goes back to Fabiano with 111.1 million. Dad, Dominick, and Paola, how would you feel to have a team value that high?
Be amazing.
I'd have to cheat at this point. How I would do that, but
feel like I'm just not doing my homework. Like I studied all night and I still get a B+. That's what it feels to not have that value.
Now, Paola, you were telling me that this was your very first season, third season for watching Formula One, but first season for Fantasy Formula One. What are some of the things that you've taken away or learned from this season that you say starting day one next season you're going to put into practice?
I would say a lot to learn in terms of like how sweets come into play, how sentiment comes into play, how and when to do day trading. I think it just takes a while to know the teams. I think if I had started playing fantasy year one, right off the bat, I would have had absolutely no sense at all of how to put together a good team. But I would say really engaging with the community, and obviously Pitwall is a great one, and getting nerdy about it with the stats has helped a ton. Right now, I think I'm still balancing my emotions versus making a logical decision. Like I'll still put in maybe a Ferrari driver in there or a Mercedes driver in there on a week that made sense to go Red Bull. Making those kind of decisions have gotten easier over time. It wasn't until this past week that I put the 2 Red Bull drivers in my lineup. That was the first time this season. But like seeing the results of making more calculated decisions, it's super motivating. So now I'll have my personal loyalties outside of F1 fantasy, but I think next year I'm definitely just going to go like cold, hard-headed. Like,
yeah, there you go. And I actually have noticed that too, because my 3 statistical secret videos, I try to do it, but then I realize even though I gave my advice, I start struggling like you do. They're like, well, but maybe. And then that ends up not being what ends up helping me out. So I was like, why don't I just take my own 3 statistical secret advice?
But that's no fun.
But it's
You got to have emotions.
But it's more fun to win. That's an even better.
True. It is.
Yeah, I was about to say emotions are nice, but the emotion of winning is even better.
Yes.
We have a good group here. Win, lose, or draw, we still have fun.
That's loser talk right there.
I was going to say, I didn't hear much support there, and I was on the podium. Boy.
No, that's loser talk right there. That's everyone gets a trophy talk.
These are foreshadows of League DRD coming through. Okay, let's move on to our Meme Team Award. This week, we have double winners, partly because their jokes play off each other so well. Our first one is Inspector Max.
Yeah,
there were so many Inspector Seb memes going on, and now Max Verstappen has entered the arena.
Yeah, and he's about 50,000 pounds lighter now.
True. In response to Inspector Max, we have Kesker. You can't touch this. You can't touch that wing. And then right after the race was over, we heard Vettel get on the radio and say, I'm going to go over there and touch Hamilton's wing. And then his on the other radio, don't do that. I'm only kidding. Come on. And then, Dad, what did Vettel do to round out his joke?
He said, but I might consider touching the front wing. Maybe they only charge me $20,000.
Yeah, only $25K. I would like to promo for you our one race challenge for the next Grand Prix at Qatar. You'll find the league code in the description below. One race, one team that you get to submit, and one opportunity to place in the top 3. And then you get a special podium ceremony at the end of our next podcast. Now, remember, there are 2 rules that we take into consideration. The first is we take base points. If you use a mega driver, we don't use the multiplier times 3. We use the base points for that driver. And second, if there happens to be a tie for podium positions, the one with the lowest team value gets the tie break. But we look forward to all of you participating with us to this next race. It's now time for League DRD. The battle race semifinals has commenced, starting with the number 2 and 3 seeds was Paola and myself. And for those that you are watching, how this works is you'll draft 4 drivers, 3 of which you will pick in 3 slots. Slot 1 will go against slot 1, and then whoever gets the highest score, uncapped, which means you can get as many points or lose as many points as possible, gets a slot point. First one to get 2 out of the 3 slot points wins. And so Paola, Signs being turboed, beat Leclerc, which you had to do because Sainz scored one less point than Leclerc. So you got one slot point. Then I turboed Bottas, which I technically did not need to do, but that's how you have to play the game. And Bottas got more points than Perez, 1 point for me, which then came down to Russell versus Tsunoda. And this is one of the reasons why Tsunoda was your 0, right?
Yep.
One measly point for Tsunoda, 14 for Russell, and that gave me my second slot point. Therefore, I make it into the finals. For Dominick and Dad, the number 1 and the number 4 seed, Dad, 14 points. Ricardo, negative 11 because of DNF, so Dad gets the first slot point. Dad, turboing Perez, which you had to do. Bottas, turboing, which Dominick then also had to do because of the power of the turbo, and Dominick beat Dad. Dominick gets one slot point, which then came down to the epic battle between the two Ferrari drivers. Leclerc, 28 points. Sainz, 27 points. Dominick, your thoughts when I gave you the news originally?
It's kind of been my luck this entire season, to be honest, where things sound great and then they just don't work out. I was 4th seed. This is usually how 4th seed situations are supposed to go. I'm not supposed to win. There's always next year.
Dad, 1 point difference. How did you feel?
Relieved. Actually, I thought that Dominic gave me a sporting chance, and I actually survived.
The only thing Dominick could have done was have Alonso instead of Ricardo, right? Then you would have won?
But who would have known that?
No way.
I made what
Alonso scored 14 points. You would have tied.
Oh.
And then Dominick would have won because he would have had the greater win differential because Leclerc would have beat Sainz by 1 point. But then Bottas being turboed would have beat Perez by 8 points.
I made the decision that I thought was best, and I stand by it, even though it was unfortunate.
And that's what happened last year in the finals, right? Dad had his little slip of paper. He was watching the race. He was excited, and one by one, all his drivers DNF'd. He was so gutted. He's like, no chance. But then Dad had a chance because one of my guys DNF'd, I believe. And so it got really down to the wire. But yeah, that's how it goes. So how this works for everyone who's wondering, we're going to have Dad and myself in the finals. So Paola and Dominick are going to do the consolation. Here's the crazy thing. Norris, having his problems, still wild card. Bottas, having a really good result, again, is not a wild card. What absolute madness. But here we go. We're going to clean the table and we're going to go to our league DRD draft. For those of you who are watching for the very first time, how League DRD works, you're taking the money out of the equation, and based off of the results of the previous race, we'll decide the order. The person you pick will then have a column in which you will then have options for your next draft pick. And then whoever you pick from that column will then enable the next draft. Paola is going first. You draft once, and then Dominick will draft twice, then you draft twice, and then him once. And also, don't forget that those that are highlighted in green because of their DNF, they are equal to 20. So they will be able to draft anybody.
Let's go with Bottas.
Okay.
Bottas. All right. Let me see what my options are now. Gonna have to go with Perez. That's like the obvious next option. And then you know what? I have learned nothing. So I am going to go with Ricardo.
That's the strongest of the 4 options that you have. Okay. Oh, that's why you're laughing, because he DNF, so you'll pick him again. Easy pick. Okay, then Paola, you get 2 picks. So Bottas gives you Schumacher or Stroll.
Let's go with Stroll and then Leclerc.
Well, Sainz is probably my next best option. I will take Sainz and Schumacher. I'll let you guess which one of these guys I'm probably not going to play.
Okay.
Latifi.
Leclerc, so you get Latifi or Mazepin?
Oh, shoot. She might actually pick Latifi. And again, it's not like it really matters.
I think Latifi it is.
Okay.
Latifi. Do we usually pick our... oh, no, we don't pick our lineups yet. We'll wait for you guys, probably.
Okay. Now on to match 1. Dad, with the higher seed, gets to elect whether he will draft first or second.
I will draft second.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, let's think what Dad's potential strategy is.
How about we think about your potential strategy and pick?
I'm picking Bottas. I'm going to copy Paola's strategy. I think it's a really strong pairing.
I'm going to do Dominick's strategy. I'm going to pick Perez and Ricardo.
Interesting.
And then I'll pick Stroll and then Leclerc.
I'll pick Sainz. I think we'll give some props to Tsunoda.
Wow.
Okay, and then with Leclerc, I will draft Schumacher.
All right. Well, I guess I have to go first.
Yep, and so now, since it's playoff time, what we will do is the lower seed will reveal whoever's in slot 1, and then they go back and forth, and once the 3 drivers have been picked, then we will decide who we turbo. So you're picking Ricardo as your first slot. Paola, you will respond.
I forgot about that.
I'm gonna pick Leclerc. No.
Yes, do it.
Perez, Sainz, and no, Stroll. You almost got me.
Okay, but you do get a pick second.
Okay, so now, Paola, who is your second slot?
Bottas.
Okay, Dominick, your second slot. Okay, then your third, Sainz, and then your third, Paola. Leclerc.
Comes down to turbos. That's going to be like the only difference.
So I have to start. Is that
I
right?
start.
Why you start?
Because he's a lower seed.
Oh, it's a lower seed, not who drafted first?
Yeah.
Huh, that's interesting.
I'm going to put Leclerc.
Huh, that's so tempting to put Tsunoda there. I guess I better not.
You heard it from him, folks. Tsunoda it is. All right, good luck.
Yeah. I'm going to actually put Perez there.
Interesting. All right, Ed.
I'll put Sainz next.
Well, then I guess I have to put Bottas.
And I'm assuming you're finishing this off with Stroll.
Man, Dad has the upper hand, I think, between Ricardo and Stroll.
Unless he DNFs, because that's the difference between going for the first and second place versus third and fourth.
Ricardo averages 15
DNF.
points and Stroll averages 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Stroll.
I'll go with Ricardo.
Okay, it's turbo time. Turbo time. This is the part that separates the men from the boys.
Win from the boys.
Okay, well, we're ready. Are you ready, Paola?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
3, 2, 1.
I guess I knew what you were going to do. I knew it. I knew Dad was going to turbo Sainz because he figured that Perez could beat Leclerc outright, but I didn't want to turbo Leclerc because then Sainz could beat Bottas. But then I figured, where else could I potentially win? If Sainz has a bad race, then Bottas won automatically, but Leclerc probably won't beat Perez. And I figured maybe Stroll, but maybe Stroll wasn't the best option because it would be better to turbo either Leclerc or Bottas. The problem is Bottas and Leclerc will sometimes have problems, but all 3 of them will have problems. And then I figured Dad just better drafted than me.
As it turns out, that was not nearly as exciting as I thought. We basically are playing exactly the same game here. If my team beats Paola's, the Dad team will beat Jeanmark's. And if Paola beats me, then Jeanmark will beat Dad. It's literally the same thing.
And there we have it. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's always been a pleasure. And next week will probably be more of a vlog style since we're going to be down in Ohio for the Thanksgiving week. Thank you again, Bro, Dad, and Paola for joining me this evening. I've been your host, J Jack. And until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall.